Hey kiddos, this is the video for Spiral 3. It's your review. We're going to go through the problems that are labeled as video. And just to let you know, the first section, evaluate functions, will be scored this time. This is not a feedback spiral. First off, we're asked to find q of 4. For that, I'm going to find the function that's q. Okay, my table is w, my graph is z, my equation is q. So q of 4 means that I'm plugging 4 in to this function. So negative 5 times 4 plus 11. I'll zoom in so I can write a little more neatly. Negative 5 times 4 is going to be negative 20. Plus 11, that's going to be negative 9. Number 2 is also a video problem. We're asked to find all values of x for which z of x is equal to 0. Okay, I've got to figure out which is z. Z is my graph. So my interpretation there, z of x equals 0 means that the height is equal to 0. So I'm looking at my x-axis, that's where the height is 0, and I find 1, 2, 3 different places that that's true. So x equals negative 3, 0, and positive 3. For number 4, I've got to place these 3 things in decreasing order. So we're looking for q of 2. Q of 2 is going to be negative 5 times 2 plus 11, which comes out as 1. W of negative 1. This time I've got to use my table. Looking for where negative 1 is. Okay, that's in the x. That means that 5 is the y value. And then we're looking for z of negative 4. And I'm going to use my graph for that. I'm looking where x is negative 4. Tracing that back down, I get a height of negative 3. In order, that would be z of negative 4. And then the next one would be 1, so that's q of 2. And then finally, we'd have w of 1, since that's the highest of those values, so w of negative 1. Next up, we've got characteristics of graphs. And we've got a lovely graph going on here, kind of a flowery type thing if you kept drawing it. This is a graph of relation. We just use the word relation because we're not sure if it's a function yet. I'm probably going to identify whether this is a function as part of the thing. This is the first one we've seen that's kind of loopy like this, and don't worry, you're not going to have to graph anything like this year. But this is a nice way to talk about some different characteristics that we haven't seen yet. So the first thing we have to do is to find the domain of the graph. None of these are labeled as video, so I'm going to do them all as video. So I know for domain, I've got to find the lowest x value. That appears to be 0. And I've got to find the highest x value. That appears to be 1.09. My domain is going to be the interval between those points. Cool. Okay, find the range of m. I got to find my lowest y value, so low y, and that's going to be negative 0.38. And my highest y value, which is going to be 1.09. The range is going to be the interval that includes all those points. The next point, or the next question, I guess, is m a function, and how do I know? I'm going to do the vertical line test. And the vertical line test tells me that if I draw a vertical line and hit more than one place, just like I did here, this is not a function, because there's more than one output for each input, or for some inputs, I should say. And I can say not a function, or just no. And I might say something like the v-line test. That's the vertical line test. A number you wrote the straight line test on your last spiral, but vertical lines are the ones we're looking for. And if you wanted to put something about there are more than one output for inputs, that's okay too. Okay, 7. On the graph of M, clearly label 1 point as a relative maximum and 1 point as a relative minimum. This is kind of messy just because we got some weird things going on with this graph. I'm going to label my max in red. And the only point that I can really see that's labeled and looks kind of like the top of a hill is up here, because the points on either side seem to be going down. There are other reasons why we probably would not do this for this type of graph, but that's okay. And then a relative minimum, I'm going to do this one in green. I'm looking for a point that's lowest of the ones around it, and that's probably going to be the absolute minimum for this guy, because around here we're going up. These happen to be also the absolute minimax, but I'm not asking you about that for this problem. Next up, we've got combining functions, and these should look familiar. These should be some of the same things we saw on the first page. For number 8, a video problem, we're looking for ZW of -3. First thing I want to do is to interpret that as Z of -3 times W of -3. Z of -3, okay, that's the graph. Z of -3 is 0. W of -3, that's my table. W of -3 is going to be 1. 0 times 1 gives me 0. For number 9, also a video problem, we are looking for Q of W of -1. I'm going to work from the inside out. W of -1, okay, that's going to be 5. And then Q of 5 is going to be -5 times 5 plus 11. -25 plus 11 is going to be -14. 10 doesn't say video, but I'm going to do that anyway for Q inverse of x. The goal here is to start off with y equals -5x plus 11. And to find the inverse, we're going to switch x and y. X equals -5y plus 11. And now we're going to get the new y by itself. So this will be -11 to both sides. I'm going to scroll up so we can see better. So we get x minus 11 is equal to -5y. And I'm going to divide both sides by -5. I'm going to be lazy and leave this just as is, so we get x minus 11 over -5, and that's equal to y. For number 11, which is on the video, we're going to be finding 5z of 4 minus 3q of 2 minus r of 0. Lots of stuff to do there, so let's do each of these individually. First thing is z of 4. Z of 4 is using my graph, and the height when x is 4 is going to be -3. So we're looking at 5 times -3. Okay, next up is going to be q of 2. Q of 2 is going to use that first equation, -5 times 2 plus 11, which equals 1. Okay, so that's going to be -3 times 1. And last, I'm going to do r of 0. And r of 0 is going to use my other equation, 2 minus 7 times 0, which is 2. So then we get plus r of 0 is 2. That's going to be -15 minus 3 plus 2, which when you put that all together, you get -18 plus 2 is -16.